Canggu is definitely the place to be here in Bali. But should you stay here? Well... Okay, so the boring answer is that it depends. It depends on what you're looking for in your trip to Bali. But I think the mistake a lot of people make is coming and staying in Canggu for their entire trip to Bali. And when I have talked to people or read about people's experiences here in Bali, the people who have had, I guess, a bad experience or a negative experience in Bali, they've pretty much all just stayed in Canggu the whole time. But of course, since so many people come here, there must be something great about it, right? So first I'm gonna mention all the great things about Canggu and why perhaps you should stay here. And after that, I'll talk about all the, well, bad things about Canggu and perhaps why you shouldn't stay here. And in the end, I'll give my own personal recommendation on what you should do. So first of all, Canggu is pretty developed now. There's been just loads of constructions over the past few years. So now there is basically everything you need. So that means it's very convenient and very comfortable staying here. Like, you can get all your Western amenities within just a few minutes. You can basically get anything delivered right to your door. You have air conditioning everywhere. There's a doctor around every corner. And there's loads of supermarkets, even with imported products from Europe and the US and Australia, so that you can buy all the products from back home. And for some people, that's pretty great, right? You can get everything you need. You go on vacation, you're just relaxing. Everything is how you want it to be, expect it to be, and you don't really have to think about a lot of things. If you're into partying, this is also the place to be. There are loads of bars, clubs, beach clubs, and just a lot of people partying all the time. There are also just countless of restaurants and cafes, and you can get pretty much any type of food that you can think about. And a lot of it is just insanely good. There are also just a ton of gyms around here if you want to go and work out a little bit, or jump in an ice bath, or go to the sauna, or those kind of health things. But I will say, the gyms are just insanely expensive. I'm not sure how this actually works here in Bali, why they are so expensive, but you can easily pay 20 to 30 US dollars for a day pass. So to go to the gym once, that's basically what I pay for a whole month back in Copenhagen, which is a very expensive city. And that's pretty much for the same standard of gym. There are some local gyms around that are quite a bit cheaper, but honestly, they have also raised their prices quite a bit, and the equipment is just usually not that great. And if you're into shopping, this is probably also a great spot for you, as there are lots of cool shops and boutiques scattered all around Canggu. Another thing that's pretty great about Canggu is just the amount of amazing villas and hotels there are here. It's very easy to find a beautiful and unique place to stay, like this cool villa that I'm in right now. Now, this part of Bali might not have the best and most beautiful beaches. They're actually often pretty dirty and the water is not like super nice, unless you're into surfing. But the beaches here in Canggu still have a very nice and unique vibe, especially if you go for sunset. It's just a lot of people chilling, hanging out, walking their dogs, or just having a beer and playing some games on the beach. Canggu is also pretty great if you're a digital nomad. I mean, this is probably the area where most digital nomads are staying. And that's probably due to a lot of the reasons that we have already talked about. And also the Wi-Fi is pretty great and stable around here. And you have loads of cafes and co-working spots that you can work from. And of course, since there's so many of these digital nomad types around here, there's also a pretty good community. And you know, you can meet like-minded people, I guess. So should you stay in Canggu? Well, if you're staying long term, I think it's a pretty good place to be and to have a base. And if you are coming on a vacation, you should go here if you're looking to party, if you're looking to go shopping, to go eat a lot of Western food, and yeah, that's probably it. And even if these things are exactly what you want to do, I would urge you to consider looking just a bit outside of Canggu, as you can then avoid some of the negatives that we'll talk about in just a minute. But perhaps look at the area of Sese, which is just like a 10 or 15 minute scooter ride away from like here, the center of Canggu. So you're still very close to everything, but yeah, you can avoid quite a bit of the negatives. morning from Bali, and honestly this is not a bad spot to be having a morning coffee, just surrounded by the rice fields, enjoying the sunset here. That's a perfect way to start the day. That really all comes down to the area that I'm staying in, which I think might be the best place for you to stay in Bali if you want to be close to all the action, all the good restaurants. I mean, close to the tourist hotspot, but not in the middle of it, so you'll be away from the craziness and busyness and the horrible traffic, and you can be here surrounded by rice fields, enjoying the quietness and a bit more of an authentic feel in Bali. What is the ceremony they're doing here?
Ceremony.
What is it for?
The new house in India.
So they build a new house and then they have a ceremony for.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. See you. But I mean, that all sounds pretty great so far, right? So what's not so great about staying in Canggu? Well, the first thing or the first complaint that you'll probably often hear is that the traffic is horrible. And that's true. It's actually pretty insane. Especially during rush hour in the morning or later in the afternoon, you can just get completely gridlocked for 30 minutes, an hour just to go a very short distance. But pretty much all throughout the day, traffic is pretty bad, especially if you're in a car. And so that's why I really don't recommend you staying in Canggu if you want to do a lot of trips to visit other parts of Bali, because you can easily spend just an hour or two just to get out of Bali. So if you're doing like a day trip, most of your time will be spent sitting in the car, stuck in traffic. And at the same time, Canggu is not very walkable. Well, this is probably true for most parts of Bali. If you don't ride a scooter yourself, you probably have to use some kind of transportation to get to most places, even if you're just going out to eat. And Canggu has actually also become quite expensive. And of course, it makes sense, you know, a lot of people want to come here, so there's higher demand. So the hotels, the restaurants can all raise their prices. But that's also another complaint that I often hear from people who came here and perhaps didn't like it so much, is that it was way more expensive than they had thought it to be. As you usually hear about Bali being like a very affordable paradise. And the truth is, it still is very much an affordable paradise if you just don't spend all your time here in Canggu. Accommodation is just way more expensive than average. You can still find some good deals here and there, of course, but in general, the prices are pretty high compared to other places around Bali. And for food, it's pretty much the same, as most of the restaurants, cafes around here are like catered towards, well, Westerners. So they just have pretty high prices compared to if you're eating at more local restaurants. But in turn, there aren't actually a lot of local warungs, the local restaurants, left around here in Canggu. But if you can find them, you can still get some amazing Indonesian food at very affordable prices. Think like $1 to $2 per meal. But probably the worst thing about Canggu, at least in my opinion, is that it just doesn't really feel like you're in Bali. Because of all of this development, all these cool hotels, restaurants and villas, it just feels like you're in Australia or Europe or the US. And it also just feels like that when you're walking or driving down the street, as most of the people you will see here are foreigners. So I just think Canggu really doesn't have that local Bali magic. But luckily you can get this Bali magic in so many other places on this island. So let's move on to, I guess, my recommendations about staying in Bali and if you should stay here in Canggu. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it really depends on what exactly you're looking for and why you're coming here. I mean, if you're just quickly flying in from Australia on a little weekend trip to go partying, yeah, this is probably where you want to be. But if you're flying from halfway across the world to really experience Bali, experience the culture and meet the local people, don't stay here in Canggu. But honestly, let's say you're coming here for a 2 or 3 week trip. What I recommend you do is that you stay here for the first few nights when you land in the airport. Because we are still pretty close to the airport here. So it can take maybe an hour or something. And of course you can really get stuck in traffic on the way, but it is a pretty good place to start your trip. Like you can start out pretty relaxed, everything is comfortable and familiar, and you can like get settled, you can beat the jet lag, you can get a local SIM card, maybe rent a scooter. Everything is very easily accessible and you can just get your bearings and get ready to explore the rest of Bali, because that really is my biggest recommendation, that you should get out there, get away from Canggu and go out and really explore Bali and everything that this island has to offer, because it is so much more than just the cool beach clubs and beautiful villas. And you should watch this video right here if you want to learn more about one particular area that I really recommend you visit in Bali. It can be very affordable and you will have a much more, I guess, authentic Bali experience.